So now I will request our first technical session expert, Dr. B.K. Tyagi, to take his lecture. Tyagi, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Bharatji, and good morning to all our participants who have joined today. And thank you, Director Vigyan Prasad, Dr. Nakul Parasharji, for this opportunity. And first of all, I think I should wish all of you a very happy technology day. Because today is the 11th May, and this is a very good day to start such a good program. And because there is a connect of this technology day with this science communication as whole. Because as a student of science communication, when we were studying about the history of science communication, the interesting anecdote was like after the World War, when America dropped that atom bomb, there was a lot of fear psychosis among the civilians, mainly in America, about the science as a whole, because they thought the science could be so destructive, and the support from the people were not coming. So then this idea was mooted, like to create a trust about this science, that science has a potential, not only the bad aspect but the other aspect also. And for the first time, there was a person called C.P. Snow. He gave a concept of two cultures. Two cultures means like at that time the entire world, especially the America, it was divided into there was a culture of scientific culture which was common among the scientific community, and the other culture was the culture of literary people mainly. So, and this a series of lecture by CP, the idea emerges that there is a need to fill up that gap, that scientific culture should also be extended to other area. That means the science should be communicated to the people in such a way that there should not be any fear in the mind of people. So just to build up that trust between science and the society, this initiative of this science communication, or taking science to the people, started in 1950, and since then it has now acquired a niche area in itself, even in the academic world also. There are a lot of universities which are offering different courses in science communication, and basic idea is to how we can take the science to the people through various means and medium. And also we should build up an army of science communicator who can be a link between science and society, because most of the time we see a person who has a better understanding of science, only he can communicate the science to other. So I think to keeping in that mind, this AWSAR was designed. I think you are 100% that target group who could be converted into science, who can take up their as a career option as a science communication, and could be the best, the suitable person who can be converted themselves into the science as a science communicator. So with this word, I'll take you to a journey of understanding what is science communication, why it is necessary, and then we will take the different modes of science communication which are prevalent just now. And for you, because the AWSAR program has two components. One is to create more and more science communicator, especially who can write science in a better way, in a popular way. Plus there is a competition component of this program, so that you can also take part into that competition which the AWSAR is offering you. So I think my PPT is visible.
Yes.
Okay.
इसको full screen mode में कर दी.
Yeah. I'm just trying. Yeah. Okay, so as you know that the science communication and popular science writing. So I think you might have a fairly good idea about the science communication, and the popular science writing is one aspect of science communication in the sense. And the overall objective of the science communication as a practitioner, because we expect you to be a practitioner of science communication, so to make people aware of scientific and technological development to enhance the level of science and technology literacy. The reason is, if they are not able to, or if they are not if the understanding is lacking, we may have chances that people may not support that initiative. So, and in India, the majority of the funding for research is coming from the public fund, from the taxpayers money. So that means whatever is being done in our lab, they should also know how their money is being utilized, what is the direction, and what will be the outcome of that science and technology which is happening in our labs, and also to enable them to make an informed and rational decision making and strengthen their decision making ability. Because now take an example of this corona and the vaccination drive. So initially there was a lot of reluctance among the people about to getting the first dose of that vaccine, and the reason was uh, like because the virus was not seen by the naked eyes, and there are a lot of there was a political angle also to that. So there were a lot of misconception and also wrong statement which were issued on the social media. They were relied more as compared to the scientific basis of that. And the reason was that the people were lacking that ability to understand and take their own decisions. So they were going by the decision of somebody else. So this is, you can understand the necessity and the importance of science communication to fill that information gap, and also to develop scientific and technological temper in them, which would reflect on their systematic and rational role, behavior, and conduct in the society. So not like running away from when the people are approaching them for the vaccination. In many places, the frontline warriors were beaten up by the community people, because they thought by this, if one person may become important, or he may die because of this vaccination. So there were a lot of myth and misconception about that, which were taking more predominance rather than the actual reality, which could be had a scientific basis. So that's why this scientific temperament or technological temperament is necessary, which and overall, if we take about this, the create awareness to enhance the spread and depth of scientific knowledge, which is new knowledge which is being happening in our labs and institutions, and build capacity to communicate, so that once you understand that basics of that basic science, you can argue, you can articulate yourself in a better way, and to convince other people also, and empower fellow citizens through participation and engagement for decision making approach. Just now it's only a few people who are taking a decision on behalf of the entire community. Now the entire process of this decision making has been changed, and thanks to the rule of science communication, the understanding of science and technology about the people, which they themselves are now asking for the reforms based on this latest input of science and technology. So for the development of overall development of the society, I think you can imagine the role of science and technology communication. So and these are the word actually which has been used in our policy statement 2013, and the latest draft policy is the public understanding of science and technology. But it is the same thing which we call as a science communication or science population, because there are a lot of historical reason this subject as a discipline emerged in different part of the world, having their own compelling circumstances. to educate people about the latest development of science and technology, and the nomenclature was different. So in India, we use the word science popularization or science communication, but in the policy, the word has been used, the public understanding of science and technology. So I think you should be clear in when these words come, they are not different word. The meaning is same for science communication, public understanding of science and technology, or science popularization. So these are the Constitution of India. You can see the Article 15AH, which is talking about the development of scientific temperament, is gives support for science communication. Then the education policy, even the latest education policy is also talking about that. Then science technology and our innovation policy and the draft policy, IPR, intellectual property right policy, these all the sustainable development goal, child right convention, and these all are giving us support for to the science communication, or to promote the understanding of science and technology among the people. And this is the our you can say the our policy 2013, which is giving the importance of this the science communication or the public understanding of science and technology. So now for science communication overall, we are using this many medium, which is a print media, electronic media, social media. Now it is a very important and powerful digital media, interactive mode of communication. The way I just now I'm talking to you, it's an interactive mode of communication, and the folk media. You can see these all have been taken from our own internal library sources, because Vigyan Prasar is using all possible means of communication to promote the understanding of science and technology among the people. But AWSAR is, as I told you, has been designed specifically for the scholars, for the researchers, for the research student, and to promote or to enhance their skill of writing for the print media. So it is more on focusing on their articulating skill through writing. So so if we try to understand that, like what is the purpose of research? Okay, so purpose of research, and how you can communicate it to the general people who can understand about what research you are doing. So the basic purpose of research is to generate or develop a new knowledge. That means something not known earlier or done earlier. Then major share of R&D is a public money, as I told you. So whatever as a scholar you are doing, I think public need to know what you are doing, or what will be the outcome and how it going to help them their development. Because the public interest in your research is automatic once they knew like something it is being done for you also. Okay, and your research, as you are doing, it may be a pure research or applied research, and pure mainly of academic interest, and hold the potential to review or relook at our existing understanding like paleoscience. But it create a lot of interest among the people. You remember when this movie Jurassic Park, first earlier one, when it came, it generated a lot of interest in the subject of paleobotany and paleogeology. And as a result, the discovery of dinosaurs egg in Gujarat, Kutch area, it was discovered, and later on when the entire thing is reconstructed, it was found that this dinosaurs was the T-Rex of India. It was of huge size. So it created a lot of interest that India was also the land of, those dinosaurs. And the records were found. So this is the way, like, it create an interest among the people. And then also, like, it may be a pure or experimental, that depend on that. And as a scientist, social responsibility, as our director has also just referred this word, that you should not confine, as a scientist, you should not confine only to the lab and doing experiment in a controlled condition, but to communicate it to the people. Technology development, you know, uh, now the total paradigm shift is on, it is revolved around the sustainable development goal, SDG goal, like whether it's a energy, we are talking about the clean energy, if it's a chemical industry, so we are talking about this green chemistry. So entire thing has now like changed, and overall thing is within the paradigm of improving, sustaining the sustainability of this planet Earth, because this uh, sorry, I'm just having some problem with the okay. So now, like as I told you, the overall objective of this AWSAR program is to bring out that hidden talent of science writing for the common people, which is already there, but with the help of certain tips, with the help of certain lectures, certain exercises, I think it is just sharpening of that talent. And when I'm doing my research, uh, it is like a data, you can see, and which is first is to, we have to sort it out, then we have to arrange, we can present them visually, and then explain with a story. Means like there should be a connect to that. So that means when this the dinosaurs in India, it was like as a research story, it was published, they said India has a parallel to T-Rex, because the T-Rex was already known to the people through that film. It was very fresh in the mind of people. So immediately there was a connect. So explained with a story, meaning this, like using your research finding in such a way that an ordinary person can correlate herself or himself with that finding, or with your research or the area of your research. So this is again, science writing is not only a skill, but it is an art also. So how you do it, I will come to certain example of same in our as we progress further. Uh, okay, I think we can. Okay, so when you first you just try to understand, when we do the research survey, or when we do the literature survey, literature survey is done in a research to find what is already existing, and then we try to find out an area where the things has not been done. Okay, so that means we are into a process of generating a new knowledge where nobody earlier has ventured into that. Okay, so that niche area, unexplored area, will form the core of your research, and how that finding will help to further build on that knowledge which is already existing, and that additional knowledge, how it's going to make a change, or what will be the significance of that finding which you are undertaking. So then what new will add my research to the existing knowledge, something not known earlier. It may be pure or applied in terms of new academic knowledge, method, product, protocol, etc. And and what do the finding imply? How do the finding impact society or the environment, or bridging the gap between science and society? These are the few questions. Once you think, once you have taken a pen in your hand and paper and you start writing, before that few things should be in your mind, and what result drove you to the conclusion. Then why do you think the results are relevant to the society? How do you arrive at those results? That means we are talking about your logical framework, methodology. Then how expensive, economical are the procedure, method, and product? Suppose if you are giving a solution which is already much expensive than the already existing. So then there is no use. So you even if suppose it is expensive, then what benefit in terms of your ecological gain, or your environmental conservation or protection it is giving you? I think that that can be connect with with your results, and how difficult is the procedure or the approach which you have undertaken. So these are few questions when once you start thinking about writing about your rose, about your research in a popular format. Popular format means you are not writing that write up for your peers group, because they among your peers, what how you communicate by writing the technical paper. But here we are not writing a technical paper, because this has been done in most of the cases. When we receive the stories, some of our the scholars use whatever is the part of synopsis, they take few things from there, whatever the progress report which they are submitting to their to their department, they because there we are using we are not using the common language, and that communication is for the peers, not for the common. So our approach, our language, our storytelling thing is totally different. But once I'm clear in my mind who is my target group, I think my entire perception, my approach, my orientation change, and the word which I'll be using, the vocabulary which I'll be using, that will be different. So you can start with the quote. Undermine the obvious. Suppose because most of the things to build up most of the space in stories I have seen, because the maximum limit is 2,500 words. So in build up the story means where we are using a lot of secondary information, and your core research is not finding prominent space in that article. So when we look at it from the competitive point of view, so then such stories are not given much weightage in terms of selecting out the best stories. And science as a tool for myth busting and remind people of their childhood, like these are the connect when you have to start writing your story. Use the story of some celebrity, character, or incident, because myasthenia is a disorder, autoimmune disorder, where like a person cannot engulf the thing. So Amitabh Bachchan is one person who since last 20 years he is taking that medicine. Thrice a day he has to take that medicine, but still I think he has the best voice in film industry till date. So this kind of if you have to write about myasthenia as a disease, so or something new which is happening in that area, so this person, a well-known person who is having this disorder, can be cited an example. Okay, so like now the Amitabh Bachchan don't have to take the medicine thrice a day, something like that. So it immediately catches the attention of the people and call for action, participation. If in case of it's a field-based research, to be specific and be concise. These are certain, once you start writing, these are a few things you can start with like that. And as I told you, science writing, popular science writing is more of a art rather than a subject, and it is a skill which you develop over a period of time. And that's why for submitting the story, the window period is almost now 4 to 5 months. So you suppose you are submitting your story this month, then keep on revisiting your story, because when you read your story, you will realize now these are there are certain area which need to be improved, and this is a constant, I should say a constant approach of doing that. So till the time the window is going to close, you final submission you do at that time, till the time you use to improve your story. Okay, so I'll start now more about to be specific about the science writing, because this was a share by Ghalib, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Ghalib Saab. So Ghalib was not very popular among his contemporaries because of his shairi was is more, even his peers were not able to understand it, what he's writing. तो क्या था कि that's why he was never very popular, and he was always ridiculed by his contemporaries. So one example of his share is like मगाज को बाग में जाने ना दीजियो क्योंकि नाहक खून परवानों का होगा. So what Ghalib is saying, that don't allow honeybee to go into the garden because it will unnecessary amount to killing the parwana. Parwana means those small insect. When you burn a candle, there are a lot of insect around that. They came near that. So don't allow honeybee to go into the garden because the consequence will be the killing of those parwanas, death of those parwana. So people used to wonder how the honeybee is going into the garden is going to the killing of those parwana. There was no in between connect. But Ghalib was having in his mind, the explanation was on his part was that once honeybee will go to the garden, he will connect the nectar. With nectar, he will make the honey, and with honey, it will make the wax, and the wax will be converted into the candle. And when the candle will burn, those insects will come. So don't allow the honeybee, to go into the garden. So that means that connect, creating that, explaining that connect is necessary. Otherwise, you become also a Ghalib. Because nowadays, the general understanding of people has enhanced. We appreciate, we understand the Ghalib Shairi, but at that time, so now look at the general understanding of the people. So giving this kind of a statement or this kind of construction of your story will be a bit difficult to comprehend by the people. So now most of the time what is happening, like here, try to understand through this cartoon, a journalist means who want to write a story about the breakthrough research which a scientist has done. So the scientists are asking, can you tell us about your the breakthrough of your research? So scientists wrote that formula. So this is my research. Now, do you think like even if you are a science student, because in a science is also so diversified area, a person may be from the natural science, means he may be a physicist. Even if like a person, I'm a life scientist, but I'll not be able to appreciate it. I'll not be able to understand that until and unless it is explained other way around. Because I'll give you here the best example, the brief history of time by Stephen Hawking. He has used no equation in explaining, that the understanding of our universe. Without except one, the equation of Einstein has been used only once or twice in that book. So this is the best example. I think it is my suggestion to all of you. You must read that book, The Brief History of Time, how a popular science can be done on such a complicated and complex phenomena of science, of universe. So avoid that. So this is Muhammad Mir Taqi. He was a contemporary of Ghalib in Bahadur Shah's court, and he used to say, "Aapne kaha," because on Ghalib share, he don't allow honeybee to go into the garden. "Aapne kaha aur aap hi samjhe to kya samjhe." Aapne kaha, once you are writing and you are only understanding, then it has no meaning. आपने कहा और आप ही समझे तो क्या समझे, कहने का मजा जब है जब एक कहे और दूसरा समझे. That means if you are saying what you are saying, it should be comprehensible, he should be understandable, and there should be a proper understanding of your thing by the other, not only about कि आपने कुछ बोला और आपने दिमाग में अपने आप ही समझ लिया, जो गालिब साहब का जो पहला शेयर जिसके बारे में हमने बात की. So this is like I found कि science communication, this is the basic, कि आप क्योंकि आप you know all the technical jargons, but the common man, he is not aware of that. So how, if you are writing in such a way which you only can understand, then it has no meaning, then it cannot be within the category of popular science writing. And this AWSAR is a program to for on writing about your research in a popular format, not the way you communicate with your peers. Okay, so this is again, I think we can skip that. So science communication, a complicated subject in the sense, like modern science, we use a lot of Western words. We don't have a vocabulary. Suppose if I want to write in my local language, Hindi or some other means Odia, Bangla, or any of those languages, then there are no vocabulary, there are no word, technical word, and literature availability. Suppose as a not about my research, but in general, if you want to write about the latest development in science and technology, then most of the research are we are getting the source is the foreign journals, and the medium of education also, that complication. वो कहानी बचपन में सुनी थी कि एक कौवे को he found a feather of peacock, उसने लगा लिया. So he was not allowed by the his own community in the crow. They say you are more, and when he was going to the more peacocks, he say you are not a peacock, you are a crow. So something with language, it just happened with all of us also. We have our own mother tongue, and then we study in a foreign language. So many times we don't have those proper word to communicate our thought process in a, so now just try to understand and make that clear, what is the difference between scientific or technical science writing and a popular science writing. So technical paper or technical science writing is done in a peer reviewed journal like Nature or American Chemical Science. Then it is for your own community, means like it is for the people who understand uh, uh, that science which you are doing, and this is about the new knowledge, technical term, and we do with a lot of figure, tables, references, etc. But in popular science writing, it is written to be published in a newspaper, magazine, blog, and so on, and it is for everyone, including scientists. Because suppose if something in natural science like physics is happening and I'm a life scientist, even for me also I need that popular science article to understand about that breakthrough which has happened in other area which are not my area in science and technology. And this is also for the knowledge review, and it is always in a simple term, and examples and illustrations that we can always include in that. So when we write about our own research, we use that the reverse pyramid approach, in the sense the most important information about the event, who, what, where, when, and why, it should be coming in the first para itself. Then the main body, the crucial information, expanding the topic, argument, controversy, story, evidence, background details, etc. And the tail, the extra information, interesting related to item, and journalistic assessment, like about your own assessment, how it going to impact the society, or what will be the repercussion or consequences of that the thing which it has been done. And here also it give you some scope for your imagination to connect with some real life situation. So in journalism, this inverted pyramid refers to a story structure where the most important information or what might be considered the conclusion is presented first. Then the who, what, when, where, and why appear at the start of the story, following by supporting details and background. That means you have to create that interest in the beginning itself, and then followed by that body and the tail, just to retain that interest with some additional or supplementary information. Okay, so basic of popular science writing. This is by Einstein. You can say, he said, they think in your mother tongue about your research. आप क्यों research कर रहे हैं? Just think in your mother tongue. You need to have a basic understanding of science, because most of the time, I'll give you one example of my one student. He was doing in atomic particle. I think his area was a particle physics, and he came, like, he says, "Sir, I'm interested in science communication." So I told him, "Can you explain me about your research in 5 minutes?" Then he looked at me in a very angry way. I said, "Sir, I have spent 5 years on my research, and you are asking me to explain you within 5 minutes." Okay, so this is the difficulty when we suddenly switch over from what we are doing and the way we are doing, when a common man is asking about your research. So that it will come only when you think about your research in your mother tongue. Then, and also you need to have a basic understanding of science. And as Einstein said, if you want to take science to the people, first communicate it with your grandparents, parents, brother, sister, your neighbors. And this is possible if you yourself have a basic understanding of science. Here, this statement is made for science communicator, basically the people who want to communicate science, but it is equally true for all our scholars also, because we want to, this is an induction process for them. It can be taken as an induction process for, you know, developing them into a science communicator, or taking them to the path of science communication. So these are some of the basic which we need to understand before, like, so basic understanding, overall basic understanding, not only about your subject, but basic understanding. It may be in life science, it may be in chemistry, it may be environment science, and other area. Okay. So tell your story. The word actually, which when we advertise, the word which has been used is tell your story. So here it's not your personal story. It's about your research, story about your research. And make sure the paper has a main theme and a punchline. This is some tips when you are writing, your story in a popular format. Avoid data dumping. There is no need. Provide context to the prior literature and cite the original work in the reference section. Okay, so just keep in mind into that reverse pyramid structure, and some of those things, just use your wisdom where you can fit in and how. Then explain the problem is important, and share experimental detail that would allow a reasonably educated person in your field to perform that experiment. Analyze the data accurately and objectively. Provide a strong conclusion describing how your work moved the field forward. Be realistic. That means, like, this is for your own internal, it should be in your mind when you are writing that. Okay, stop showing gratitude towards the guide and your institute, because most of the research story which we have been receiving, I think many words, more than 100 words has been used for showing that gratitude towards the guide and your institute. So avoid that, it is not required. Okay, now for your story, because many time what happened, like whatever is the title of your research, same title has been given in your popular story. I think this is the biggest mistake in that makes you that sounds you, because in that itself there are a lot of technical words. So you have to very once you have a basic understanding of science and understanding about your own research and the other aspect which we have discussed, how it going to change the scenario or add on to the existing knowledge, how it going to impact the society, etc., etc., and that social connect. I think after that you craft a title for it. So considering the following when writing, who will read your title, how will your title be found, and how you will your title be used, and what is being presented and what is of interest to your audience, what will be clear and what will catch attention, and what are the key descriptive terms, in the sense like and what make a good title. It should not be more than, I think 20 is the upper limit, but it shouldn't be more than 10 words, and uh, it grammatically sound, resonate with your TOC, images, graphical, abstract, which you are using, avoid buzzwords and hard to justify claim like first and only. Sometimes it's just happened just to praise our own work, we say it is the first and all that, and avoid listing potential application. uh, it is necessary sometime to establish the social connect, but uh, maybe like what you think as a researcher is feasible and which is achievable, which your research is showing, then only you can put that. Otherwise try to avoid that and avoid acronyms tended to have little meaning outside of a specific area. So abbreviation to use ही नहीं करना. Okay, so now let's come to a beautiful example of a research. This was appeared in Times of India newspaper, and it was a research reporting from a German lab where this for this palak hai na, spinach, a active compound was isolated, which help in stimulating the muscular strength. आपका muscles को वो strong करता है. Now look at this thing first in Indian context. कि हम most of our athletes who are vegetarian, what they eat palak, spinach, to get the strength, and by isolating that compound, it has its some meaning, in the sense, now first is to catch the attention of the people about they should read this article, is that the public, you have to use some public memory. Now I think we all are familiar with this papaya's cartoon. Okay, and what's the story is he to perform a task, he is eating that spinach, and he get a lot of strength, either to fighting the bad people or lifting something or removing some obstruction. He used to take that. So that means the in public memory, this concept was there कि पालक खाने से जो पपैया है वो बहुत सारी चीजें कर देता था. Okay, so that means the correlation of this research is there with this cartoonic character. So, and it is fresh, it is there in the public memory. So just to craft a title to such a complicated research, how the title has been crafted here: papaya right, eating spinach does boost power. Okay, because in the research they have isolated an active compound from the spinach, which boosts the power. Now later on in the article, then they are talking about the research has proved that the eating spinach is good, it boosts the power, blah blah blah. Where this research has been done, who are the people who are involved in that, and the consequences. That means then the demand came like the eating spinach should be, and the compound, which bit difficult for me to pronounce here, that active compound which has been isolated, it should be listed into the banned category of food item. or it should be, because it's an steroid basically. It come into the category of steroid, and steroid are prohibited, and those it should, that active compound should be in the list of those prohibited food item. That means a person who is a vegetarian, if he will be tested for dope test, I think he will be positive if this compound is, listed into then banned category of steroid. So now this was the, immediate, you can say, the outcome of this research. First is breakthrough is isolation of one compound which boosts the power, so that instead of eating that much of spinach, you can make a capsule out of that compound which can immediately boost that. Second is social implication is, can we now if it is in the banned list of those items, how that means what will be the fate of those athletes who are vegetarian and eating that in India. Now the Indian connect, most of our Indian पहलवान जो वर्जिश करते हैं, कुश्ती करते हैं, they are eating only that. So in international competition, I think they all will be out. Okay, so this is the way the potential of benefit or consequences or implication. This is the way we can build up a story. Okay, so you can see the title, and now let's come more closely to that. So first is if you see papaya, right, eating spinach does boost power. So it was in the public memory, so that they have used for that. Then something relatable, New Delhi was definitely onto something when the ripe open can of spinach, because this is something like, again, the character, if you see that I mean the cartoon series, you will find how he is doing, and then the outcome. So a study involving 46 athletes was carried out, where this is a procedural aspect. Okay, what was the method or the procedure, and how this was done, it was also the part of that. And then spatial comment. One of the scientists said that their hypothesis was that we would see an increase in performance, but we did not expect it to be that big. This is a special, inverted commas, and social implications. So this is like to first, if you look at in the light of that reverse pyramid, the main finding has been given. Papaya was right, and then what is that active compound, then the methodology, then the special comment, if there are any, and the social implication. What will be the fate of those athletes which are vegetarian and mainly relying on this spinach based diet? Okay, so even now, if you see many film stars, you will find there the 1 or 2 meals of the day is mainly composed of this palak only. One of them is our this John Abraham. You can see, if you consult his dietitian and you look at that chart, you will find that. So these kinds of interesting anecdotes, those connects, can be added to make your story more interesting, readable, popular. Okay, and less important, but make your story more interesting and relevant for specific target group. Okay, so then local, national, and international implication. This is it may not be necessary all these component is relevant for the research which you are doing, but this is as an example, I found this was the best story, which science story, which was covered by a journalist from a journalistic point of. In my parameter as a communicator, I gave him 100% mark to this study. Okay, so try to be with that approach or with this. And now this is again a story, change of heart diagnostic number to make sense of ECG report. So this was again a story where आपका दिल जो धड़कता है उसके पैटर्न से एक डायग्नोस किया. Of that research would be that you are not going further to those tests which are much complicated. So in this way, I think, and many more, you know, I think we can come to that. Label free optical, no, I think, yeah. Yeah. This, look at this: engineer create a simple test that can measure stress hormone in sweat, blood, urine, or saliva. So that means you need not take a blood sample. Okay, so there was a story, I think this was a Delhi IIT only, when they developed a technique of detecting वो जो आपका blue ribbon test में होता है ना, बच्चों को हमेशा newborn babies को अक्सर हो जाता है, then you have to take out a blood sample, and sometimes it's a painful, because it's an invasive method you are using. But if we come out with something like that, कि sweat से, या saliva से, if we can measure that, so something like that was done. So these are some of the immediate, especially in medical science or health science, where the social connect is immediate. Okay, so now the whole approach, or the you can say the challenge is to find a social connect of your story to make it more interesting. Okay, so these are some of very prepares popular science article with style and substance, and opening paragraph, setting the hook, open with a quote as a novel dialogue if it's there, set these are not applicable in all, but to some extent. Okay, so I think main body, maintaining interest, I think this is again explanation to that writing, and then again concluding and summarizing and satisfying. These all I think so if you can explain it simply. This is a quote by Einstein. If you can explain it simply, you can't understand it well enough. So that means your popular story should reflect basically the understanding of your understanding about your research first before it come to the people. Okay. So these are some of the cartoon which we have used, I think, because our second speaker is waiting. Let's finish with them and then I'll come to that. So in the last, I should say, hey, or again, I'm completing it with the Ghalib Sahab only. Hey, और भी दुनिया में सखुनवर बहुत अच्छे कहते हैं कि गालिब का अंदाजे बयां है. So try to be a Ghalib, but not with those mistakes which Ghalib might have done during his period. So better come to the level of common people to convey your story. So thank you very much for listening me so patiently. And
thank you, sir. Thank you. Actually, कुछ एक query था. I think that has been explained also. Everyone is writing science stories nowadays, but we are missing some crucial point. We cannot find out, are there any thumb rule for a good story writing? I think you explained already, but if you want to put some explanation on this, please give. It's in the chat box. Thank you, sir. हेलो, मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
जी जी, आपकी आवाज आ रही है. आई थिंक कुछ नेटवर्क इशू है. त्यागी जी अभी स्क्रीन ऑफ है, उनका म्यूट भी है.
तो इनका वो स्क्रीन शेयर भी हटा देते हैं.
हाँ, देख लेते हैं. स्क्रीन शेयर तो हटा देता हूँ.
So now we have another expert which is well known in science communication, science writing, especially for print media, Dr. C.M. Nautiyal, sir. Welcome, Nautiyal, sir.
Thank you. Can I start the video now?
Yeah. Gaurav ji, can you please make Dr. C.M. Nautiyal as a co-host?
जी जी, सर 2 मिनट दीजिए मुझे.
Yeah, sure.
Meanwhile, it's getting done. We have a query, sir. Everyone is writing science story nowadays, but we are missing some crucial point. We cannot find out. Are there any thumb rule for good story writing? I'm sure you are going to explain because I have heard your lecture. So you are going to explain. So just keeping in mind. While
I'll be handling this question during my.
Okay, sir.
Yes,
And
now you can share your video, sir. What else, sir?
Just a second. I'm in a lecture. I'm in a lecture.
I think
But
you
I'm
make-
not able to start
uh-huh.
the video. It says you cannot start the video because the host.
Raji, you have to make him a co-host.
Okay. Yes, sir. Now you can share.
Yeah, now, yes.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Please, sir, guide us for popular science writing. And we have approximately 131 attendees.
Participants.
I'll. Okay, so yeah. So good afternoon. I think I just crossed a dividing line between good morning and good afternoon. And you just had the beautiful lecture by Dr. Tyagi. Vigyan Prasad has been organizing such webinars for now quite some time. And I will share with you my PPT. So, okay. Hello. Uh, I think, yeah. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. So I'll go ahead. I have created just last evening, I coined a term, which is a mix of writing and write. Please don't look for this word in the dictionary. It won't be there. What I am trying to tell you is that writing science is something which is a little bit special. And the way somebody just asked a question, it's very clear that I'm not the only person who appreciate this issue. When it comes to writing science, we have to be a little bit extra careful. But before that, why is it important that we should tell people about science? I'm sure that each one of you has heard the name of Isaac Asimov. He said, a public that does not understand how science works can all too easily fall prey to those ignoramuses who make fun of what they don't understand, and to the sloganeers who proclaim scientists to be the mercenary warriors of today and the tools of the military. The difference between understanding and not understanding is also the difference between respect and admiration on the one side and hate and fear on the other. And we know this from the example of nuclear energy. A common man is not able to distinguish between nuclear energy and nuclear bomb. And therefore, either he worships the power of science or he hates it because he or she thinks that this is against the humanity, against the human lives. We are also very well aware that each one of the audience is not going to be a professional writer or a journalist. In fact, most of you are will be growing into fine scientists. Maybe one or two of you would develop into good science communicators. maybe some will be doing both, but at every stage on your life, written communication will stand by you. And by attending this seminar and by writing your science, your research in a common man's language, you will be benefiting yourself because it will, number one, understand, it will help you in understanding your own subject much better. When you write something for somebody else, you look at it as a layperson and you understand it better. You begin to look at the fine points. And sometimes people have done good discoveries, good inventions, because they looked at it from as an outsider. When you prepare for your interaction in consideration for some fellowship of some academy or some scholarship, for some award or some honor, at that time you would know that you are facing an audience who is not an expert in your field, and it's very important that you can explain to them the significance of your work. In the course of your career, you would be asked sometimes to appear on radio, on television, or you will have to talk to some journalist and explain to them in simple language what research you have done. I remember that my first talk for radio was not in the All India Radio or in any other radio channel. It was way back in 1988. And I had got some award, INSA Medal for Young Scientists. And from Delhi, Akashvani, the journalist approached me and told me to speak on the work for which I had been given the award. And I tried to do that, and they asked me to do it in Hindi, which was still more difficult. I did it, and then I realized that perhaps I can do it. And that was the first time I had spoken anything for the radio. But such occasions will come in your lives also very often. It will be very useful. Sometimes you will be facing the committees for promotions, maybe for project, maybe for some report for your institute or your department. And at that time, this capability will come in handy. Then also, this is a social commitment. Imagine a situation like we have had for the last 2 years in the country, and you are a medical specialist or you know about COVID-19, then you will have to explain to people why they should wear masks, why they should take certain medicine, or why they should get vaccinated. At that time, your skills of communication will come in handy, whether you write for a newspaper or a magazine, or you talk to them face to face. And then there are cases when the paper comes back to the author and the editor says that this is too specialized, this is not fit for, say, nature or science or current science, but it should be sent to some specialized journal. But the same paper, the same material, written in a slightly different way, could very well fit into nature, science, or current science. So that is where your communication skills will also come in handy. Similarly, I know of cases where papers from good journals have been sent back just saying that either please get it written by paid services in a better way, or get it written by some native English speakers. This has happened to many people. And these days, this practice has become quite common. Therefore, your writing skills are going to be very useful, very important for you. But when you are explaining to a scientist and when you are explaining to a common man, certain thing becomes very important. Look at this cartoon which I had taken from the internet. I don't know who drew it. I just changed the caption, and the caption I have made it: a communication is meaningful only if it's comprehensible to the target audience. Of course, we don't expect 100% success. If you write here, water is at 9 kilometers, and then you also write H2O is at 50 meters, 99% of the people will crawl or walk 9 kilometers for water rather than just 50 meters. So you know that the language which a common person understands is different from the language of an expert. And the expert should know, in the interest of the society, the language of the common person, and he should use it or she should use it when writing for the common people. This presentation of mine is about the demands made by spatial nature of science, also about how writing for peers and writing for laypersons differ, the challenges posed in communicating science, and what care we need to exercise in writing so that there is no ambiguity. And this is one thing I would be emphasizing upon. The art of exemplifying. When we give example, when we give a simile, we have to be very careful. I will be explaining why. Then we also have to choose topics. Which topic should we write about? In case of this AWSAR program, you will be writing about your research paper, about your thesis, or if you are postdoctoral, maybe you have changed your field from your PhD arena, and now you are working in a different field, then you should be talking about your new field. In short, I will make you cautious in writing, tell you what precautions to take if you want to communicate yourself more clearly, and the rest you will have to learn from experience. No book, no speaker, uh, no teacher can teach you. What is special about science? I'll just look at that. It seems that there are two participants have raised hands. If they are not doing it now, please remove that. But they may be about the previous lecture. So what is special about science? In science, we come across objects which are unfamiliar, which nobody has seen because they are very far away, or they are too big, they are too far away, or they are too small, can only be seen under the microscope. Maybe their shapes are so unfamiliar that we cannot even imagine them. Maybe their dimensions are not known to us. They may be millions or billions of kilometers huge, something like a black hole, which is very small, but which is very massive. There can be galaxies which are very huge. There may be fossils or bacteria or virus which are very small, which are in hundreds of angstroms, maybe in microns, which means 1/10 of a millimeter, or 1/100th of a millimeter, or 1/1000th of a millimeter, or maybe still smaller if it's a virus. There may be ideas which are abstract, like electric field or magnetic field, which you cannot see, but they can be detected. Sometimes you will be talking about things for which a lot of background information is needed, and sometimes people have never seen it, so they cannot visualize it. If you go to the depth of the oceans, you will come across things which you had not seen before. In fact, the variety of species inside the ocean may actually be more than what you see on the land. But we have not seen them. If we see them, we will not be able to recognize. You see one like this here at the bottom, which is at the 3-kilometer depth in the Mediterranean Ocean. And this is very small. This is a millimeter size thing, but nobody has seen it before, but now it has been seen. I'm not able to change the slide. Why is that so? Yeah. So to begin with, we will discuss about the topic and title. I think Dr. Tyagi has discussed it a little. I will just say that as far as possible, you should relate your subject or your topic to something which is in current interest. But now, when you are writing for AWSAR, you have to write about your paper or your thesis, so it may not be always possible. But later, when you write a popular science article, this would be noted if this is related to something which is current. The title should be such that it arouses curiosity. As far as possible, it should be catchy. The moment somebody looks at it, the person becomes more curious to learn more about it. Format. Now, in this case, you have no choice. For AWSAR, you have to write an article. But even in the article, there can be different genres. It can be a play, it can be an article, it can be in the dialogue form, this can be as a feature or in any form. But it should be able to convey the fine points of your research work in a way that is interesting, so that people don't stop reading once they have started. It should be relevant as far as possible to a common man, or you should find some connecting point to the common man. If this is not related, you can present it as something which is very new, which excites a human being and which excites somebody's brains. The style will depend upon the audience. The background and perspective to place your contribution is also very important. It should not look like something which is from faraway universe only. If you can connect it to people's everyday experience, this is useful. If this is going to be helpful in, for example, if this is something to do with medical science, please relate it to their daily life experience. And the format, of course, cannot be like that of a research paper or a thesis. It has to be different. The structure will be completely different. When you choose to write a popular science article, for example, for AWSAR, you have to think about the target readership. If you write an article, even in AWSAR, you will not be writing it for every person who would be reading a popular science article. If there are 10-year-old students, maybe they will not understand it. If they have no background in science, maybe they will not understand it at all. So you have to be very clear. Are you writing for those who know a little bit science, or you are writing for those who don't understand science at all, and you have to come down to their level to explain to them the basics used in your article? Then what will be the language you will use? If you are writing for the very young audience, your vocabulary should be very limited. You cannot choose very bombastic words. Then are you writing it for magazine or newspaper or newsletter? In newspaper, if you write 500-word article or 600-word article, that is good enough. But if you are writing for a magazine, the article can be 3,000 words. For AWSAR, you have quite a good range of words, 2,000 words, 3,000 words or so. So that is fine. Now, what is your purpose? By writing this article, are you trying to motivate somebody? Then this is not so fit for AWSAR. Are you trying to educate? Are you going to tell people about your science? Yes. But then your style would be of educating. Are you going to instruct them how to act in a particular way as you have learned by doing your laboratory experiments? Are you also going to provide them some entertainment? Are you going to tell them the interesting applications of your work so that they enjoy reading it? Or your purpose is a mixture of all these? You have to decide that. Now, as for the structure of your article, a thesis has a standard structure. You write a synopsis, then you write the introductory chapter, then you write the experimental methods, then you present your data, then you analyze them, and then you conclude them, and then you perhaps can write about the scope of the studies. That is, what possible things can be pursued based on the results or research that you have done. So the structure of a thesis is like this. Structure of a research paper which you have been writing is also like that. But this is not valid in case of a popular article. In a popular article, you can start with the result right away. Your title of article can be a bit curiosity arousing, and then you can say that this is a result you have obtained, and then you gradually say how you did it, how you arrived at your results, what do you conclude from your results, and how this can be useful for the society or for some other science. Your narration could also be in first person, in personal style, which is not the case with thesis or a research paper, where you have to be a little bit formal. You have to stick to a format. In a scientific research paper, you can use a lot of data. You can use graphs. Now, these days, many of the journals accept some videos of the experiments, additional data, and many such things which go as additional information, even in journals like Nature. But in case of writing an article for AWSAR, you do not give data. If you can prepare a graph which is very simple to understand, just two axes, x-axis and y-axis, and you can name them and very simply explain by using very simple language that if value of x increases, then value of y also increases linearly, or there is an anti-correlation, or there is absolutely no correlation. These things you write in words, and if very much important, you can show the graphs. But pictures are welcome. Suppose you are working on some animals, and you can show the pictures of those animals in the laboratory. If you have made an equipment can show that equipment or the component which you have made. But otherwise, data tables are not welcome in a popular article because the majority will not understand them. Instead, you should present the synthesis or the conclusion of your work. You should highlight the significance of your work. For example, if you are working on the structure of the virus SARS-CoV-2, that is, then if you are going at pains explaining why these spikes, the membrane on the protein shell of the virus, or the RNA inside the protein shell, if you are explaining these things, people may be interested in knowing that. But if you give the details, you should also tell them what is the significance of these spikes. This spike helps the virus in protruding the human body. If you say that this has RNA, then you have to tell that, okay, in this case, there is no DNA. But if this is a popular science article, you also have to tell what RNA is, why it is important, and basic definition. You have to start with the basic definition. Another very important thing is if you have used some very, very complex method for reaching at a result, please don't describe that method in detail. You have to describe that method in very short, in very simple way, because you are attached, you have attachment with the process, but the reader is not attached to the process. Then you have to make the whole thing very interesting. Can you find some story or some anecdote or some character that can fit in? Can you find some interesting cartoon which you can insert in the article? If you can comfortably find one, if you can make one, then it would be interesting to start with that interesting story, with that anecdote. It can even be from our Puranas, but make sure that no wrong message is given. If you are writing the article for the very young people, you can use a splash of colors. A lot of colors can be there. A lot of figures or features can be there. If you are writing for peers, this is different because they are qualified. They are familiar with the background of your subject. But if you are writing for the common people, for the non-experts, then please don't use too many technical words. If you are forced to use them, give their definition. You can give them in a box also. Use the local language term. If you're not writing in Hindi or some local language, use the technical term, use the available technical terminology which is available in the CSTT publications, but explain the meaning because sometimes the Hindi term may be more difficult to understand or utter than the original English term. But for the general readers, no equations and no formulae. You may be knowing that when Stephen Hawking was writing his book, then the publisher told him, every equation that you use will reduce the sale of your book to half. So Hawking later said that I use E equal to mc square in my book. Otherwise, my books would have sold twice of that. Another thing you must remember is when the printed or written material is read, when return to the previous page easily, you can turn pages. You can make certain words bold. You can underline them, italicize them, place them into a box, put in a different color, put a footnote, change their font size, use a different font, and so on. You can insert pictures here and there to make it interesting. But always remember the constraint. When you are writing, you don't gesticulate. You cannot wave your hands. Expression of your eyes, the twinkle of your eyes, the movement of your eyebrows, all these things which are available to you when you are talking on TV are not available to you when you are writing for a magazine or a newspaper. Everything has to be, every image has to be created using words. This is an art which takes time to develop. When you're writing something technical, really something where you are describing a procedure to be followed, you have to be very, very careful. Your words have to be very correct. I'll tell you an interesting story. Pannu was the best blacksmith in town. And then one day when Bannu was approached by Sannu. Then he told Sannu that, okay, you can join me as an apprentice. And he said that strike with the hammer when I nod my head. So Santu said, okay, when you nod my head, I'll strike with hammer. And then Bannu nodded his head. Sannu struck with a hammer. And now it's not Bannu, but it's Sannu who is the best blacksmith in the town. This is because he hit with the hammer on Santu's head, and the Santu was dead because Santu had not been careful enough to say that when I nod my head, please strike at the iron rod with your hammer. So when you give instructions, you have to be very careful. In science, particularly in chemistry or in food industry, we come across instances where we have to say that two elements are in the ratio 1:1. Now, this I will explain with this example. Suppose you go to a shop, to a restaurant, and they will tell you that they are serving you a vegetable made with grapes and kaddu, that is pumpkin. Now, you will be very happy. You will go and taste it, and then finally you will find there is no taste of grapes. There is only taste of pumpkin in the vegetable. So you go and confront the shopkeeper, the restaurant owner. You say that there is no taste of grape. How much grape did you add to the vegetable? He said, well, we use in the ratio of 1:1. You come back satisfied. But then when you go home, you realize that maybe what he had done was in this vegetable, there was one pumpkin and one grape. So there won't be any taste of grape there because he did not tell you that it was not 1 kilogram of pumpkin and 1 kilogram of grape, but it was one pumpkin and one grape. So when you are writing in your writing, please be particular while expressing ratios or quantities, that units are very important. If you say these two elements in the ratio of 1:1, then you have to say this is atomic ratio, or both of them are 1 mole, or both of them are 1 kilogram each, or whichever way it is. Similarly, when you say copper and oxygen are equal amount, that does not mean that if they have an equal number of atoms, or that does not necessarily mean both of them will weigh 1 kilogram. It will not necessarily mean there will be 1 gram mole of each. So units are very important. Similarly, we sometimes simply say that a particular object is very big. We might say this is a big fossil. Now, a fossil can be as big as several meters. This is a microfossil. This can be a fraction of a millimeter in size. So if you say a big microfossil, which you see at the top, actual size of this is maybe about 1/10 of a millimeter. This is a pollen grain, and the reproductive organ in a plant. And this is the pollen grain which you get from flowering plants or from angiosperms. Now, this has an actual size of a fraction of a millimeter, maybe 50 microns, maybe 100 microns. But if this is 200 microns, this is a big pollen grain. But what you see at the bottom is a galaxy. When you say a smallest galaxy or a small galaxy, that is hundreds of light years big, which means if you start from one end with a velocity of light, it will take you hundreds of years to cross it. So big, which means tens of thousands of billion kilometers in size, but it's a small galaxy. Whereas a half a millimeter pollen grain would have been a very huge pollen grain, or half a millimeter, a few millimeters microfossil would have been a big microfossil. So please be very careful that you may be a micropaleontologist, but your reader may be an astronomer or an astrophysicist. You may be a physicist, and the reader may be a chemist or may not have any background in science. So please, whenever you use a unit, also explain the meaning of a unit in terms which are very familiar. If you tell them in terms of meter or centimeter or millimeter, for example, if you say 100 microns, a common man may not understand. If you say 1/10 of a millimeter, will perhaps understand. And if you say that this is about 1/258 of an inch, that person will understand. So units will also be very important. In AWSAR, you write about your own research work, maybe your own thesis, or a research paper where you have got some definite results. Now, the problem, if you are only in the second year of your research, then it's possible that you have not reached a definite conclusion. Maybe you are practicing a method and you have only finalized the procedure, that method. Then you can write about the procedure, how you have evolved that procedure, because you don't have any great conclusions. Or the option is, please wait for 1 more year and then you write your article when you have reached some definite conclusions. Now, in an article which you are writing for AWSAR, there is no definite rule that there should be 50% of introduction and 50% of your own research conclusion. There is no such formula. Depending upon how much work you have, depending upon how complex the subject is, you have to allot space to the background material and to the conclusion. So you are the best judge, but there must be some results which you have found. Very often, we presume too much on the part of the reader. This is not a right approach, because sometimes your reader may not be knowing much. If the reader doesn't know much and you presume that your whole exercise would be useless. For example, this scientist who was working in the plasma physics laboratory, you know that by plasma physics we mean, for example, the science of fire, science of that quasi-neutral mixture, it's technically called. For example, if you heat gas, it has positive ions and also negative ions. This has got charges, but they both are equal. So overall, this is neutral. For example, the sun, the stars, and so on. So plasma physics laboratories are dealing with plasma or such material. So this scientist is working in a plasma, but he employed a person who was a biologist. So when the person comes to the scientist and says, you need plasma, right? Because he thinks this plasma is of biology. So there is the bridge which is missing between the two. So please, when you use a term, make sure that your reader understands that term in the right context. Now, science sometimes can throw up surprising facts, and when you say something, the reader may find it just unbelievable. So if this is something surprising, you can sound the reader, now there is something which you will not find easy to believe, so that he's prepared for it, and then you can explain why this is something which is so strange. So in all of these things, the language becomes a very important thing, because language and the words are the carrier of what you want to say. So we have to be very careful while writing long sentences. In popular science writing, this is best not to use long sentences. For example, I'll give you an example of a sentence. It says, after struggling for an hour, the veterinary doctor and the animal were face to face. After struggling for an hour, the veterinary doctor and the animal were face to face. This sentence doesn't make it clear who was struggling. Was it the veterinary doctor or was it the animal? Similarly, there is another sentence. After orbiting the moon for several days, the scientists decided to drop the probe on the lunar surface. Was it the spaceship which was orbiting, or it was the scientists who were orbiting? This sentence doesn't make it clear. Sometimes, based on your prior knowledge, you can judge what may have been happening. But if this is a new situation to the reader may not understand. Take another example of ambiguous writing. An ancient carbon mystery. Is the carbon which is ancient and this is mystery of ancient carbon? Or the carbon is just 150-year-old, but people do not know about this mystery for hundreds of years. Therefore, it's an ancient carbon mystery. Sometimes people are casual in writing captions, particularly for the photographs. It happens more often in newspapers. For example, I don't know how many of you can read Hindi. It reads, भवन की बिल्डिंग से कूदकर आत्महत्या करने के पास पहुंचे लोग. And this is one of the, in fact, the highest circulation newspaper in the world. भवन की बिल्डिंग से कूदकर आत्महत्या करने के बाद पहुंचे लोग. Somebody has committed suicide. That person cannot reach to watch its dead body. What they wanted to say is these people have reached, look at the dead body of the person who jumped from the building and committed suicide. So a little carelessness and it becomes funny. But in such cases, one can understand the meaning because it hurts the common sense. But it's not always possible. Even small things like comma are important. A woman without her man is nothing. A woman without her man is nothing. First sentence will make the man very happy. Second sentence will make women very happy. If you take an example from Hindi, अम्ल को टेस्ट ट्यूब में से बीकर में जाने से रोको, मत जाने दो नहीं तो भयानक विस्फोट हो सकता है. So your duty is not to allow the acid to go to beaker from the test tube. An action is stop the acid from moving into the beaker. Now you change the position of the comma and the second sentence reads, अम्ल को टेस्ट ट्यूब में से बीकर में जाने से रोको मत. Don't stop. जाने दो नहीं तो भयानक विस्फोट हो सकता है. So you see that small things can make a hell of difference. Then we come to terminology. There are in science, a particular word means a particular thing. So you have to use that term. You cannot replace it, which is not our experience in the common literature. In literature, we say that, okay, there are a lot of equivalent words. We can use amber, asman, akash, sky, or space, whichever. But then in science, you use a word in a particular sense. So please, if you're writing in a local language or in, for example, in Hindi, Marathi, Bangla, Tamil, Telugu, or in any other Indian language, and then you have to be careful that you take the term which is given by the Commission on Scientific and Technical Terminology, CSTT. But if you find that the term is not available or the term is very difficult to understand, please use the original English term, but you can explain that term either in the main text. If you feel this is stopping the flow of your text, then please use a box and define those terms in that box or as a footnote. I will show you some things which again are sloppy writing if you don't take care. Being a suppose somebody is working in soil, the toxic materials in the soil, and happens to write a sentence like this: being a contaminated land scientist, I decide to tackling this problem and proceeded to that village. Now, what this conveys is that this scientist who is writing this article is a contaminated. He's a land scientist, but a contaminated land scientist. It's not true. He is a scientist who studies contaminated land, but he's not a land scientist who's contaminated. You know, see that small things can make a difference. Similarly, syntax can be very important. 100% pollution free. This phrase means you will get pollution without paying anything. But if you write with a hyphen, if you write 100% pollution free, that means this is completely free from pollution. Sometimes we give examples, we exemplify, or we use similes. But similes should be to make things easier and not more complex. Very common, we say this thing is like this thing appears like this. When we look at this, we are reminded of some object X. But the reader does not know the attribute, that is, in which context you are suggesting the similarity. For example, I remember that sometimes we also use terms with which the audience is not familiar. To say that plasma is in the shape of a toroid. This is something like, you know, the tube filled, air-filled tube of a vehicle, which is circular, which is like a ring, which has a width also, and which is circular in cross-section. If you say a vada, this will be communicated better to an Indian audience compared to calling it donut. An American understands donut, but if you're talking to a rural child, that child will not understand what a donut is. If you say vada, probably that child will understand. So your similes or example should be taken from that terminology which is familiar to the children or which is familiar to the leadership. Take another example. When you say that this thing is like football, the person would be confused because he has not seen the object which you are describing. The reader will think whether this is round like a football, which is of brown color, or white and black color like a football. Is it filled with pressurized air like a football? Is it bouncy like a football? Or this is an object which people use to play. So they will be thoroughly confused. So you have to be more careful and say that this rock which you see here in the field is round in shape like a football. Or you say this thing is bouncy like a football. Then the meaning will be conveyed more clearly than just saying that this is like the other football or any other object. Similarly, if you say, don't say for this circuit we will use a better resistance or resistor, or we will use a better condenser, or we will use a better circuit. Very clearly say that we will use a resistor of higher value or bigger value. We will use a condenser of lower value. We will use a material which has a higher density. Don't say better material or worse material, because it depends upon application which is better. In some circuits, higher resistance is better. In some circuits, low resistance would be better. So we have, when talking to or when writing for the common people, we have to avoid technical jargon. If we have to use it and we have to give an example, please be very clear in which respect the similarity is suggested. Because higher melting point is not necessarily better. In some places, you want that wire to melt. For example, in fuse, you want the fuse wire to melt. So it doesn't have to be a wire which does not melt. Another thing in an article, sometimes you can introduce an element of a humor, which I gave you an example just now, that in the plasma physics laboratory, the scientist is shocked because his assistant brings in a tube some plasma, which has nothing to do with the plasma of physics, which is the fourth state of matter like fire. He's bringing something which is in our blood. So background is very important. If you're talking about, for example, you're trying to tell people to use masks, you're trying to tell people to maintain distance, you're trying to tell people to wash hands repeatedly with soap solution. You can use a cartoon like this, which I published in a COVID book. It says, there is a jinn, माफी मेरे आका, मास्क नहीं, दूरी नहीं, और हाथ भी मत धोना, और मैं कोविड से बचा भी लूं. It's impossible. I give up. The jinn is not prepared to help a person who is not going to use hand washing, mask, and is not maintaining distance. This conveys in a simple story-like way to the people that if they want to save themselves from COVID-19, they must practice these three things. So you can use such cartoons in your article and convey. So I think we have done something as a communicator. As a scientist, also we have a duty. When we write an article, we should not glorify certain notions. Very often people who are from literature or other fields, they explain things, they describe things as if everything came very easily. This is not true. Newton's theory of gravitation did not come just because he was sitting under a tree of apple and an apple fall down. In fact, people have not been able to find any evidence that Newton ever sat under an apple tree and saw an apple fall. So please do not glorify these wrong notions. Research, you know it very well, that is a result of repeated work, repeated experiments, and sustained and persistent thinking. It does not come in a jiffy, although idea can strike in a jiffy. It can flash in your mind. It happened in the case of Kekulé, who thought of the structure of benzene when he was sitting by a fireside and dozed off. But he had been thinking about the problem for a very long time, and that is why he was able to imagine that the snakes which he saw in his dream, the snake had the tail of the next snake in his mouth. And then the trail of this snake was in the mouth of the snake behind him, and so on. And these 6 things formed a ring, and that ring structure of benzene was found out in this manner. But it did not happen to many other people because they were not thinking about the structure of benzene. I give you an example of Nature. The research paper in Nature had a title like Miocene Domain Evolution and the Primary Divergence of Eukaryotes, which no common man would understand. And Nature, as you know, is a journal which is not really very specialized. They're like newspaper of science, people say. So they sometimes take the technical paper, made a simple, understandable version of it, and put it here in the beginning. And what was that? They converted it into simple language and said, evolution, a treasure trove of modes. Similarly, crystal structure of a bacterial homologue of Na plus by Cl minus, dependent neurotransmitter transporters. They translated it into a simpler language. Molecular physiology, intimate contact enables transport. You would look up the issue of Nature, and you will find in the beginning there are items which write science in a very simple manner. In my own case, for example, if I worked in the radiocarbon dating laboratory, if I have to explain something to a scientist who's working in the radiocarbon dating, I don't have to tell him anything about this. But if I am writing for the students of MSc who know a little bit of physics and chemistry, I will perhaps give them this equation of age of a material like T equal to log of A naught minus log of A divided by lambda. And then I will explain to them the ln means log with the natural base, A naught means 0 time activity or initial activity, and A means the present activity, and lambda means the decay constant of that radioactive. This is for somebody who has studied reasonable level of science, say up to BSc, or at least up to intermediate, because he will be able to understand this equation. If I suspect that there may be people who don't understand it, I will also give a graph and try to tell them that the radioactivity means that if you have 100% material at 0 time, after 5,730 L, it will reduce to about 50%, then it will reduce to about 25% in another 5,730 years, then it will reduce to about 12.5% in another 5,730 years, and so on. And that is why we call this time period half-life of this radioactive isotope. But then there may be readership which does not understand even this equation or the graph and all. So I have to go to a schematic in a still more simple method. I have to tell them there are 16 mangoes or some fruit, which half of which ripen after 1 day. So we have 16 raw fruits in the beginning. After 1 day, half of them ripen because they become yellow. Of the remaining 8, further 4 of them ripen. So now after 2 days, we have only 4 which are raw, and we have 12 which are ripened. 1 more day, even of those 4, 2 of them ripen. So only 2 are raw and 14 are ripened, and so on. From this diagram, you understand what radioactivity means, that after every half-life, half of them change to something else. 1 more day, half of the remaining again change to something else, and so on. So if you can count the number of ripened fruit, you can back calculate how many days have passed since all of them were raw. And this is the principle of radiocarbon. So you have to judge your audience. You have to think of in terms of your audience, and then only you would be able to explain things to your audience. Many, even in written thing, many ways are possible. Quiz, book review, film review, then documenting your experiments. Even poems, science poems can be written where you can explain your science. You can write about social or societal impact of the science which you have done, the research you have done. There could be new procedures or technical things emerging out of your work. You can write about them and also mention if there are any social messages for them. You have to promote rational thinking, anti-superstitions thing from your writing, but always remember things do appeal to brain. If you tell people that you have to wash your hands repeatedly because soap molecule has a special property, one end of soap molecule is positive, the other end is negative. One of them attaches to membrane, the lipid membrane on the of the corona, that is the oily thing, and the other one it attaches to water, which is a hydrophilic end. Therefore, it attaches the two. Therefore, this is joined to water. And when you wash it off along with water, the web or the lipid or the oily layer of the corona also washes away. You become safe because now virus cannot attach to your body. So if you are explained to them in simple language, they will know why to wash with virus, why to wash with the soap solution, or why to use alcohol-based sanitizer because that will attack the protein. If they have conviction, they will follow it. If they don't have conviction, they will not follow it. But this is only appealing to their brain. I remember that human beings are mix of brain and heart. When you write a message to somebody, I love you, you don't say these ventricles and when these arteries and this diagram to anybody, which is actually the correct diagram of your heart. You say, you send them, I love you message with this one at the top, which you know is not the correct picture of heart, but you use that because it appeals to their heart, it has an association, and the other does not appeal to a common man. So as a communicator, when you write something, please remember, you have to appeal to the heart and also the brain. We are living in a country which is very special country. We have a mix of tradition and modernity. In our country, even satellites was taken for launching, loaded on a bullock cart. We have places where people offer milk to the rats. We have places where you find electrical pole right in the middle of the rail track. We have places where you have bulls on the road and so on. So we people are different. We have different cultural things. We have different cultural traditions. So when we appeal to them, when you write for them, you have to keep those sensitivities and sensibilities also in mind. So please write your science in a simple manner. Keep your audience in your mind. Keep in simple language. If there are very difficult concepts, please give them in a box or write footnotes. Don't write too long or too small articles. So with these ideas, please proceed to write your articles for AWSAR. I think AWSAR will be announced, competition will be announced very soon, and Dr. Bharat Bhushan would be telling you about that. So you have a few months time perhaps to prepare your article. By that time, you can also complete some more research. So all the best to you. I hope we have been able to give you some tips so that you can write these articles, and please compete in this competition. Tell your friends to write for this, and this will be able to uh, tell you and will make you happy about your research that you have been able to communicate it to your people. Thank you.